Who changed your life and you had no idea they were going to have such an incredible impact? I bet someone may have just come to your mind. Maybe it was that they believed in you, maybe it was that they challenged you, maybe they opened a door that changed the trajectory of your life. Today's guest has spent her career doing exactly that for others. I'm honored to welcome Catherine Wilson, President and CEO of the United Way of Greater Newark, a respected leader whose passion for community, equity, and opportunity has helped shape lives far beyond the walls of just her organization. In this conversation, Catherine shares the lessons that have guided her journey, from why stepping outside your job description can open unexpected doors to the difference between mentorship and sponsorships, the realities of nonprofit leadership, burnout, pay equity, and why the strongest leaders stay curious, they ask better questions, and never stop learning. She also challenges us to think differently about creating a change, because meaningful impact doesn't happen simply because we care. It actually happens because we choose to act. Whether you're leading a nonprofit, building a business, managing a team, or simply looking to make a greater difference in your corner of the world, this conversation will leave you thinking long after it ends. Before we begin, be sure to subscribe to the Today's the Day Changemakers YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Today is the Day Live It. And if you haven't picked up your copy of Today is the Day Live It, you can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, Target, and other online major retailers. Let's face it, one opportunity can change your career. One conversation can change your perspective. And one person can help you change your life. So we welcome you to the Today's the Day Changemakers podcast. We thank the over 135 countries who have downloaded, people in over 135 countries who have downloaded this podcast. Now let's get into this incredible conversation with Catherine Wilson. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Today's the Day Changemakers podcast. I'm your host, Jody Hope Grinwald. And as I say, every single episode, I interview the changemakers, the inspirers, and those who are disrupting the status quo in the best way possible. And today I have Catherine Wilson. Hi, Catherine. How are you?
Hi, Jody. How are you?
I am great. And for us right now, it's a Monday, right? So this is,
Yes.
it is. And who knows, it may be a Monday by the time somebody's listening to this too. So, but you know what? I'm saying today, it's happy Monday. Hello, Monday. And it's exciting because we're doing good work every single week, making a difference, right, Catherine?
We are doing that, and the Knicks are the NBA champions. And I can see New York City from my office, from my apartment. I knew the minute they won because everything in the building erupted. So it's very exciting to be here with you on this Monday.
You know what? I'm so glad you mentioned that because it's interesting. I'm not a sports fan, but when you watched the end of that game, and whether you were watching all along or just watched afterwards to see what was happening in New York, and I'm from Brooklyn originally. Oh, right? What a moment.
Incredible.
Just yeah.
Incredible. Incredible. And you don't have to be a basketball fan for that, right? You don't have to, yeah. Yeah.
No, and for me, my entire platform is about connection. And I say connection is the work, everything else, and seeing people connect over
Yes.
sports like that. Why can't we do that
Yeah.
over other
I know.
things? We'll get into that topic in a minute because there's so much we could talk about, right? About
Yeah.
wait, if we can connect over the win of a Knicks game, why can't we connect as human beings doing other things that matter too, right?
Yes.
I'm going so just so the listeners can hear a little more about you. I'm gonna This is the only time I read in the interview is I will read your bio, a little bit of it, and then we're gonna get into a conversation. Sound good?
Okay. Yeah, sounds good.
Catherine Wilson is the president and CEO of United Way of Greater Newark, where she brings bold leadership, systems thinking, and deep community insight to drive innovative solutions. Since assuming the role in 2015, she has transformed the organization's impact by focusing on education, health, and financial stability as levers for long-term systematic change. A strategic convener, I love that, and coalition builder, Catherine is known for turning complex challenges into collaborative opportunities. She mobilizes the right people, partners, and policies to create meaningful, lasting change. Catherine, actually, prior to becoming CEO, Catherine spent 5 years at United Way of Greater Newark designing and evaluating community programs with a focus on grassroots empowerment. And we can go on and on, Catherine. Is there anything from, well, I want to say this, in 2025, Catherine was selected as a Rockefeller Foundation Big Bets Fellow, joining a national cohort of visionary leaders working to scale transformation ideas that create economic opportunity. Congratulations on that.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome.
Thank you.
I never want to leave out the good parts, but there's so much to everybody's bio that I interview. So it always usually comes up in conversation as well. So congratulations on all your
Thank
amazing
you.
work. You are welcome. So I always say this too, for the listeners' sake, we didn't start here, and way back when we worked our way. So not to go through every year of your life, but what did you want to be when you grew up?
It's funny. I didn't necessarily have a particular profession that I was interested in, but I would say from a very young age, there was something internal that I wanted to make a difference in the world, that I wanted to help people. And that started at a very, very young age, like maybe 4, 5, 6 years old. And I don't know where it came from. I don't know why, but I just wanted to be someone who helped other people. So I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what it looked like. But yeah, that's really, and I sort of course, like in anybody's journey, right? At one point, I really wanted to be a professional writer. I have a degree in communication, specifically in journalism. I was a journalist in college. But ultimately, I really did just want to help people.
Which is interesting because I, not too long ago, a couple of years ago, I spoke to about 300 high school seniors and I asked them how many of you want to be in the nonprofit world, and not one person raised their hand,
Right, right, right. Right, right.
right?
Yeah.
It's not because most people think you can't make money doing that because it's nonprofit. And, if for whatever reason it's not on the radar, and it's one of the things that I feel like is a missed opportunity because we need more helpers out there and supporters. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think that a lot of young people don't necessarily even know what the nonprofit sector is because we don't hear a lot about the nonprofit sector in the media, or at least we haven't in the last 20 or 30 years, right? So I think that part of it is just exposure in terms of, you know, this is a sector that makes a difference, right, in people's lives. Whether it's you're helping folks who are maybe experiencing poverty. You're helping folks who may be experiencing a health crisis. I mean, the sector is as large as there are issues across the globe. So I think that lack of exposure and that lack of, for lack of a better way of saying it, actually romanticizing it, does not allow for people to really be aware of what the sector is and does.
Right. And then, if they hear about burnout and all the other things
Right.
because of the
Right.
fact. And
Exactly.
I just want to say this out loud to those listeners, and please, share what your thoughts are, is that you can absolutely make money being in the nonprofit sector as you move up the ladder. You won't make the same amount as they do in the corporate world, which is absolutely ridiculous because we're not for profit, we're for impact. And Simon Sinek coined that phrase, and I love that. What are your thoughts on the fact of that? Because I know it is a hot topic about the fact that in many cases, and I know we're not going through your life right now. We'll go back to that in a minute, but I really feel like this is important for other nonprofit professionals to feel heard, but also for the for-profits to understand it's important for us to get paid at the same level.
Yeah, I think that um, it is a challenge, right? It's absolutely a challenge. It is an issue with the sector in terms of how funding comes into the sector, right? A lot of it starts with, you're basically raising money off of people's goodwill, right? Donate to this cause. Then you have to go out to philanthropy and make your case. And we all know how philanthropy operates, right? And so that in and of itself is a challenge in many different ways. I won't get into all of that right now, but and I think there is a lack of understanding and respect, right, for the fact that people who work for nonprofits should not necessarily need nonprofit services themselves because they're not making a lot of money. And I think that that is a huge challenge. I do think that, as you said, the higher you go on the ladder, right, the the more compensated you become. But there is also a cost to that, right? There is a cost to having an advanced degree. There's a cost to when you are the leader, and I have talked about this previously, right? There is a cost to your own life, right? Because you are committed to the organization, the cause, whatever that is. So there will be sacrifices. And yes, your compensation will increase to a certain extent, right? Because there's still, you know, there's still even in the nonprofit sector, right? If you looked at the CEOs across, let's say Newark, those who are male, those who are female, there's still a pay discrepancy. There's a pay discrepancy between those female CEOs who happen to be black and those who are not black, right? And so I think that there's a lot of work to be done in this area. But for those who are starting out on the front line, or maybe you're in middle management, it is harder. It's much harder. It's much easier if you have a spouse, right? And you have someone who can make up that income. But if you are not in that position, or you're a young person and you're trying to figure out how to even live independently on a nonprofit salary, it's absolutely a challenge. It absolutely is.
I couldn't agree with you more. It is absolutely and the other piece is when you talk about the trade-off too, is that the amount of hours that are put in
Yep.
is it's not a 9 to 5 role. It will
No,
never be a 9 to 5 role.
no.
I would love to say, but I would love to say it would be. But the other piece to me is that even though it's not, there are other benefits, right?
Yes.
I know from working, as executive director for the American Heart Association and VP of Development for American Lung and running a 501(c)(6) organization myself as CEO, there are trade-offs too, as well. In the fact that if you're working weekends, they used to call them Jody days. I used to say, you know what, if you work the whole weekend in an event, come in late Monday, maybe, you have to have a little flexibility within the
Yes.
framework because you
Yes.
can't just take. And I've seen that happen in the industry because we get a little bit, I don't want to use the word greedy, but we get a little bit because we know greedy in the fact that we have to hit these goals because these
Right.
goals actually impact
Right.
lives,
That's right.
right?
That's right. And your bottom line, let's be honest, right? If I don't meet my goals with philanthropy, I may not get funded again, right? And so then that puts the organization in jeopardy, puts people's salaries at jeopardy. So I think there are absolutely trade-offs. There are pros and cons of each of it. I think the other thing that I know myself experienced, I know that people in my own organization have experienced, I know that people in the sector experiences, we also work multiple jobs. So when I was uh, in my earlier 20s, I worked a full-time job and then I left that job and I went to another part-time job at night where I did overnights. And then I would basically get up from that job, take a shower at that job and drive back to Newark, right? An hour or more. And that's how I paid my bills. So, and I was in grad school, right? So it was a lot. It was a grind. It was a grind for sure. And I know that there are other young people doing that, because people have to be able to make ends meet.
You also mentioned a discrepancy between male and female. You mentioned that earlier, and I want to go back to that because it's such an important topic. What do you believe, in your mind would be step one to try to make that change that? Because it's really, we keep talking about it. It's still happening. It's gotten a little better if you look at it, but it's a trickle effect. It's not happening very quickly. What are your thoughts on what would be a grand step here to make a difference and change that?
Well, Judy, I think the first thing is let's stop talking about it and actually look at the data. What is the data actually telling us about this? And I don't think we do that enough. So I have female colleagues who will say to me, I'm going through a contract negotiation or, I'm going through my evaluation. I'd like to have a raise. I give them my own analysis, right? I look up the 990s of the organizations who have similar budget sizes. They have similar reserve fund sizes. Maybe they have similar years. I compare male and female, right? And it's not always apples to apples, but ultimately, if you're managing a certain size budget with a certain size staff with a certain size reserve fund, there shouldn't be a hundred or $200,000 discrepancy, and there is. And so I think what we need to do is actually do that analysis, and I think philanthropy needs to look at that, right? I think our boards need to look at that. I think we have to be honest about what we're looking at, and in some cases we have to stop trying to be all things to all people. So maybe we don't do a particular program because we'll actually have some more funds to not only pay our leader more, but to pay our staff more as well, right? So if we scale down to scale up, that helps. But I think ultimately it's what is the data telling us about where salaries are at right now?
And I'm going to go back to one of the first things you mentioned in what you just said, which was let's stop talking about it.
Yes. Yes.
We do have a tendency, and I say we as a general term here, to make meetings for our meetings.
Yes. And then we never take any action, right? We never take any action. So I think that that's an important first step is let's stop talking about it. Let's look at what the data says. And then let's start having those real conversations, not just with our own boards, but with our funders, because as you alluded to, burnout at the leadership level is at an all-time high, right? And one of those, it doesn't fix burnout, but you also have to feel like you're being compensated in a way that people value your work and what you're contributing to the organization.
Well, and also if you are being compensated correctly, then when you go on vacation, you can actually go away
Yes.
on vacation
And enjoy it. Yes.
and enjoy it and not have a
Yes.
staycation where your phone is still going off and you still have the ability to answer emails.
That's
And
right. That's
it's
right.
better to be able to take off and go somewhere where
That's
there
right.
is no Wi-Fi service.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. And adding more vacation is not the answer to more compensation, right? Because I've seen that too. Well, we'll give you another week. Or well, that doesn't help if I can't go anywhere. Right?
That is exactly what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
And
It's
I'm
like
not speaking, let me be really clear. I am not speaking about my own board on this. This is not me saying that this is my experience right now in this organization, but this is a pervasive issue and it's not just across our city, it's across our sector.
100%. Now, I won't use names, but I was just with someone who had a paid nonprofit sabbatical because their organization allows that, and that's something that's being talked about more and more. To give people, it's not a vacation. This
Yeah.
is paid time leave for a certain amount of time, right? Do you want to share a little more about what you know about that? It's he was glowing,
Yeah.
and
So we have a paid sabbatical policy also. I have yet to take it. Maybe I'll get to do that next year. But it also requires planning, right? But I think again, when you have a board that understands, and board members come from all sectors, right? They come from corporate, they come from nonprofit, they come from all, media, whatever. But when they really understand that rest is better for not only the leader, but the organization overall, I think that, you know, that is the key. And I also think that folks understand when you have that sabbatical policy, you do get better results from your leader when they get to have that kind of rest. And some people argue, well, we don't have that in the corporate sector. We don't have that. We don't have that. No, but you also make way more money over your lifetime. You could retire earlier, right? You could take much more time off in extended places that you would like to. And so at a leadership level, right? That's what we're talking about. And so I think sabbatical policies are really, really important. And I'm so happy we have one. And I really do need to make the time to take mine. Ours is, I believe it's 3 months, but I've seen up to 6 months. I've seen a year of paid sabbatical leave. Yeah, which is incredible and such a gift.
truly is. It truly is. And 3 months is a gift. A year is like a special gift. I'm like, wow, that's a great opportunity right there. But you mentioned something too. You talk about that the leadership piece, and I think for those who are listening that may not be in that space yet, right?
Mhm.
They're either A, they're figuring out whether they want to get into the space, or they want to just learn more about nonprofits, or B, they are in the middle and they want to move up. What advice do you have for them?
You know, when I was in my, or I will say still early 20s, one of the things that I did was try to really understand the overall organization, how it worked. Could I sit in on meetings that maybe weren't necessarily pertaining to my direct job role, but as an active listener, maybe not a participant or a contributor? Um, I spent a lot of time with my supervisors to understand their challenges, like, talk me through what you're doing. And so I think part of it is just um, being available and also be interested in other things outside of what your direct role is. And I think that that's really important because otherwise, when you want to have that particular promotion or you're trying to move up within the organization, now you've already had some exposure, right? And then people get to know you. This is, I mean, I'm sure you've talked about this, I talk about this. It takes mentorship and sponsorship within organizations for you to move up. So I had in my, again, going back to my child welfare days, I worked in a nonprofit. We advocated for children in foster care. And my then supervisor, she was not only a mentor, but she was a sponsor. She advocated for me to get promoted multiple times. When I came to United Way and, you know, the then CEO resigned, it was the CFO who was not just a mentor, but she was the sponsor who went to some key people on the board and said, you have to give her the opportunity to do this. And it was because I had spent time with these folks and I had asked them questions and I was curious. And also like, how can I help, right? If I have a little bit of extra time, is there a project that I can take on? Is there something outside of the scope of my job description that I can do?
Right. And so with I think with that, the mentorship you mentioned is really important.
Hmm.
That I feel like is like for me, it was my HR person in American Heart became my mentor. You're smiling and you're
Yeah.
nodding. So
Yeah.
tell me why that is. There's
Because I
something.
think I think in every organization that I've worked in, so I worked for the state at one point for child welfare. I worked for this other organization with that dealt with children who lived in foster care. There was always a woman who I found as a mentor who connected with me, who I connected with, who helped me figure out some of these challenges, right? Because all young people, all young workers, we all go through our challenges. Even now, we all still have our challenges. Um, and there was always that one particular one. And then that person then also became a sponsor. It wasn't just the mentorship, it was also the sponsorship of like, hey, you should promote this person or you should give this person that project. And I think that is critical for success and especially for young women, um, because we don't always get the training, the mentorship, right? But if we find someone in an organization or even in another organ, maybe it's outside of our own organization, I think that's critical.
Absolutely. I couldn't say enough if I didn't have the mentors I had in my life. Because I did, so for those listening, and I say this, I did not have the degree. I didn't finish college. So for me,
Mm,
being hired by any nonprofit, one of the prerequisites was
yes.
having that bachelor's degree. And now, for in some it's that master's degree or the
Yep.
doctorate or whatever.
Yep.
So I had to grind so much harder to find people that actually believed in me and then said, we'll mentor you and
Mm-hmm.
to get you, and
Mm-hmm.
it was incredible, even as I got older, now in my 50s, when I changed roles, even with experience, still not being able to hit that button that says I have the bachelor's, even though I have the experience, always is whole. So I say this and share this for those out there. If you don't have the degree, and I'm a hot at my kids, one already has her master's from Columbia, the other one is going to be going. So I'm a big advocate for education. It didn't fit me. So for those who it doesn't fit out there to keep going, you can't, it's not, there's other ways, there's alternative ways. And I just want people to know that because a lot of times it feels very confining to feel like I'm never going to be able to do it because
Mm,
I don't have that degree. That's
yep.
not always the case.
Yes. Agreed. And, going back to something you said, education, it may not always be a fit. It's also not always financially feasible, right? I mean, it was a grind. It was a grind. And it was a lot. I used to call it the mortgage on my brain. And it was for almost 2 decades. It was the mortgage on my brain. So, that's something else that folks have to consider. But like you said, now it's at least a master's degree, if not something even more advanced. So, but as you said, they're all there are always alternative ways.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It was my biggest gremlin in my life is not was has been. But then I've learned to accept it. And again, the reason I bring it up is because so many people out there think they A, can use it as an excuse not to grow, or B,
Right.
see it as a limitation. And I also want to share with other leaders, don't just people are people. Just because
Right.
they sit in a classroom, I hired an attorney to help to be a fundraiser for one of my areas when I was at the American Lung. And it didn't work out because even though somebody who had such great experience doesn't mean they're a fundraiser.
No.
So
No.
that's what they could click the bachelor's degree, they could click the law degree, but it doesn't matter because at
That's
the
right.
end of the day, it is about humanity. Sitting in a classroom will give you lots of great information, but it also is personality too. So I
Absolutely.
In a world where trust drives decisions and relationships matter more than transactions, disconnection is something businesses simply cannot afford. I'm Jody Hope Grinwald, a leadership and connection strategist, and my work is different because I don't offer just a single framework or surface level fix. I bring an entire ecosystem built on connection with me. I work across leadership, career transition teams, and client relationships, helping organizations rebuild trust where it may be strained and design their work so disconnection doesn't happen in the first place. Because when one link is off, it affects everything, and sustainable growth depends on keeping those connections strong. To learn more or inquire about me speaking at any of your events, reach out to me at Jody, Jodi, at todayisthedayliveit.com. I want to make sure we talk about your incredible organization and all of the things you're doing in Newark and all the things you're doing out there. So please share. I mean, I think people think they know about the United Way, and
Yeah.
I've had one of your colleagues on years ago as well, and I'll give Kieran a shout out. But I just want to say that I don't think that everybody understands the undertaking in the United Way. So please share.
Well, I always tell people whenever I answer this question, the first thing I always say is, "This is not your father's United Way." So let me start by saying that it's not your grandfather's United Way. It's not your father's United Way. And the reason I say that is for some of our grandparents, our parents, United Way was historically an organization that would go into the workplace and raise money on behalf of all these other organizations. That's what makes it what we call a federated organization. And then we would have volunteer councils that would review grant applications and then distribute those funds that were raised into the community. And in as you can imagine, there was a scandal in the 90s at United Way Worldwide. Some people stopped becoming it's actually in every textbook, so you all can go look this up,
Mhm.
which is why I bring it up. Um,
Better to
and
get it out, right? Better to just kind of lay it out
it's
there.
better to lay it out, right? There was this alimony scandal. It was in all of my grad school textbooks, right? And I think since then, donations had gone down, and then we, of course, had the recession in 2008, where, a lot of corporations, not only were they facing, financial strain, but the folks who worked for them were facing financial strain. So donations went down, and also there was a shift at that point. In terms of a lot of corporations ended up creating their own foundations. And so you didn't necessarily need a United Way to come in because they hired staff to actually, use their own funds to distribute into the community. And so for us, the way that our United Way operates is really around convening, around collaborating, and then leveraging money that we either raise directly from our donors or from foundations into the strategies that we're working on. So that's a very high level view. Like, well, what does that actually mean, Catherine? So right now, we're very focused on a collective impact model we have. It's called the Newark Prosperity Hub. It is a host of about a dozen or more partners across the city who are working on helping Newark residents achieve economic mobility. So we might, for example, get a grant from Citibank We keep a certain percentage as the admin fee, and then we re-grant that to our partners who are providing either financial literacy, financial coaching, whatever that looks like. During COVID, we raised probably close to $10 million and sent that money back out into the community. So we ran a grants program for the small businesses who could apply for money during the shutdown. We gave money to food pantries. We gave money to all kinds of organizations. We worked with Prudential to acquire masks and PPE. So it's like all of those types of things. We are sort of that central hub organization that's either raising money or other resources and pushing that back out. And then we help, try to figure out certain strategies around, for example, the new administration, when I sort of realized, okay, they're going to reduce this government funding to organizations, how do we all come together and figure out how we raise more money? How do we bring together ourselves for more back office support? So it's like those types of things. Ultimately, though, every United Way is focused on health, education, financial stability, and now sustainability, which is either, supporting the sustainability of nonprofits and or more like disaster relief type stuff.
So let's talk about the person who's listening to this and feels connected to it. How do they support you? What's the best ways?
So the best way to support us is to reach out. Maybe you want to volunteer. Maybe you want to get more involved with our Women United group. Maybe you want to join our board. Maybe you want to become a celebrity reader. We do a program every year where people go into the schools and they read to the students. But there's always ways to support. And so the best way to reach out is send us an email, go on our website, give us a phone call. We're pretty easily accessible.
That's amazing. And what's your website?
Our website is uwnewark.org.
uwnewark.org.
Yep.
What I will say is you do not have to live in the state of New Jersey to support the organization. I have been lucky to say that I've been able to help nonprofits connect with other people that would not know about their organization unless through here. And then they were supported by a donation, some large, some small. So if you're connecting to what Catherine is saying, they could really use the support and help. I'm a big advocate for the work you do. And I think it's incredibly amazing. What would you say would be the top 3 successes that you have felt you have been able to do in your role at United Way? And you can give me less or more. I'm not going to hold you, but we could be here for 2 hours probably. So it's probably better we keep it shorter because you've been there a bit. And
Well, I would say that the first one is really before I became the CEO. It was actually within my first year. So I came to United Way in 2010 as the data analyst and the program design person. So I just finished grad school. I got a degree in social work. And one of my professors who worked for United Way Worldwide in a regional office said, by the way, there's this job at United Way. I think you would be a really good fit for this. I get the job. Great. I come in. And I was hired to design something called an individual development account program. So what that means is somebody signs up and they start saving their money in a bank account. And once they reach a certain amount, we would match those funds with another amount of money. And then they would have a pot of money and they could either buy a home, start a business, go back to school. But part of that program required a financial literacy component. And I did not want to teach financial literacy at all, but I was required to because this was part of my job. Anyway, I got this email from this woman who said to me, I really want to teach financial literacy. I wrote this book. It's called The 1 Week Budget. And I was like, and she was actually emailing the woman who had been my supervisor who had left the organization. I said, well, the person you're looking for doesn't work here, but I need someone to teach financial literacy. Why don't you come in and meet with me? So she comes in, we have this meeting. It turns out like we're the same age and we had a really good conversation. And I said, well, I would love for you to kind of give us a preview of what you want to do. So she came, she did it with the staff. It was great. And then we contracted with her to start teaching financial literacy. And here we are 16 years later. Tiffany Alicia is the Budgetnista. She's a New York Times bestseller. She has a $40 million business. And she's my friend. And we were United Way of Greater Newark at the time, United Way of Essex and West Hudson, we gave her first contract, which of course, once you have the United Way brand, right, you can leverage that. And she did. I mean, she absolutely did. I give her all the credit in the world. She's incredible. But I always consider that to be a success because not only did she come in and teach people financial literacy, but she created her own business out of this, right? So the return on investment effect, the multiplier effect of this. And I will tell you that recently I was in a conversation with someone at Rutgers and he said to me, by the way, I just want you to know, I took that financial literacy class in like 2010, 2011 with Tiffany. And people still tell me that. Like people will still say, I took this class with her and it changed the trajectory for me financially. And that I consider to be a huge success story. I consider a lot of the work that we've done to be hugely successful. We worked with the city and the school district during the first lead in the water crisis. Obviously, the work we did during COVID was incredible. You know, working together with our partners, saving people's lives. I mean, Rockefeller Foundation at that point came to us and said, we have $1.5 million. Can you help figure out how to design a vaccine equity strategy for the city? Right? I mean, the amount of, and then convincing people to actually take the vaccine, right? So, I mean, I think that those types of things that are life-changing for other people are what keep me sort of committed and devoted to it. And right now we sort of are having this economic crisis in this moment. And so I'm hoping that 10 years from now, people will call and say, it was because of an organization like United Way, right, that supported me or my family that got me through this. We had someone in the IDA program. She went through it. She got a financial literacy. She finished her bachelor's degree. She went on to get a master's degree. She got full-time employment. She bought a house through Habitat for Humanity. I mean, those are the types of stories where it's like Tiffany always taught me, you change one woman, you can change a family, you can change a neighborhood, you can change a community. And I think that underneath all of that is this backbone organization that supports that work.
So there's so much where I can go with this right now. First of all, Catherine, your energy, it comes through the Zoom screen over here, and I hope and know that those listening from all around the world, and I want to thank the listeners who do, will be felt because you're so passionate. That's why you definitely deserve and need the sabbatical, by the way. I mean, I'm tired for you right now. So
I mean, I don't do it by myself. Let me be really clear.
I know you don't, but listen, it's an up and down thing. It's the leadership and it's the people underneath. You need both. It has to work together as a machine. Nobody does it alone, and anybody who claims that they do it alone is wrong.
Well, they're lying. They're lying.
They are lying. From it doesn't matter where you are within an organization, you are such an important piece of that, and people don't realize that.
Everybody plays a critical role. And I tell the young people this all the time. The person who comes in at night to clean the bathroom, maybe they empty the trash, they say goodnight to me, they are just as important to this organization as me. The person who sets up who runs our social media and does the events for us and does some other things, she is just as integral, right? Because without her, and I like to tell people, without her in that role, right, it doesn't work. And the machine doesn't move forward without everybody doing their part. And I think that that's a misnomer that the leader is the most important person in the organization. No. And I also want to acknowledge the board, right? I don't think people give enough credit oftentimes to the amount of work that the board does. Our board chair, incredible woman, right? She is at Prudential. She's a VP. She's got all kinds of stuff going on, but she gets it and she inspires other board members. She does fundraising. She shows up to events, right? As a volunteer, nobody's paying her to do this because she's passionate about the organization. So I think it's critical that we understand the leader is one person. Yes, we are important, but everybody is important in the organization. Everybody.
Agreed. And you know what? This is the thing too. We're still doing board trainings because of the fact that you are so lucky, but not every board. Yeah, I could feel it. I could feel it. I feel it. But it almost sounds like they could trade. And I don't mean this in any way, in a bad way. What I know is, and what I've seen, because I've been doing this for over 25 years, is that a lot of people will join boards and they don't really understand
Right.
the role of the board member. It looks great on a resume, but us nonprofits, we need each and every one of you, to give, not give, get, help, support, attend. There's so many words to use here because all of those things help us because we're always running on a skeleton crew. There's never enough people in nonprofit,
That's
you
right.
know?
That's right. And I think on our end, we have a responsibility when we are interviewing, recruiting, communicating, to really understand these people are volunteers, number one, right? What are they passionate about? Why United Way? What is it about this organization that you get excited about? Because it's not cancer. It's not heart disease, right? It's not kids in foster care. It's a very different kind of organization. Can you get excited about that? And where do you like to lean in? Because I think that that's the other side of this is we as leaders need to understand, just as we do with our employees, right? What are your strengths and what areas do you want to have new experiences that you want to grow and and gain some volunteer opportunity with?
Well, I think that's you hit on something so important, and that is, do we ask the right questions when we're onboarding a board member before we even say, do you want to be on the board?
Right.
Let's go back even before onboarding. What about just having that initial
Yeah.
conversation? Sometimes we're so desperate, we need more board members, or we need, whatever it may be, and they sound good. They got a great title and they know a lot of people, but if they're not willing to open the door and you don't know what they're passionate about, then they're not going to be engaged. So, with an arts education organization that I run as a nonprofit, I say we're not feeding the hungry.
Right,
We're
right,
not
right.
helping the homeless,
Right.
right? So if we don't have the people who are connected to what that can give to someone, then they're not going to understand.
Right.
So I think that's really important. I want to also go back this whoever Tiffany is, and I don't know her. I would love to have her on here because her impact sounds incredibly amazing. So please let me know if that's ever a possibility. But I think
I'll connect you
that,
to her publicist.
thank you. But I say that also because of the fact that you didn't want to have to teach financial. I want to go back to that. You
Oh,
didn't
heck
want to
no.
have to teach financial
No.
literacy. And all of a sudden, what you manifested showed up on your doorstep almost to say, "Hey, I'll do it. I'll teach." Right out of nowhere, somebody just makes a phone call and says, "I'll be there. I'll do it for you if you want it." And I think that's such a beautiful, beautiful thing. Then you got to do what you loved, and she did it. She got to do the class.
You know what's so funny? We laugh about this now a lot. She, so I detested teaching financial literacy. I detested, and there's no offense to the banks who do this because I know that, they do this, they want their CRA credits, but they also want people to understand financial literacy. All of that is great. Tiffany taught preschool. So she understood fundamentally how to teach people. I never wanted to be a teacher. At one point, someone in my life was pressuring me to go into teaching. I was like, oh, hell no, I'm never doing that. I have no interest in doing that. Um, and she showed up in my office. She had on a gray t-shirt, blue jeans, Chuck Taylors, and the thing that she will tell you, if you interview her, she's going to tell you the story. She says to me, well, can I use your copy machine? And I thought it was such an odd question. I was like, well, of course you can use our copy machine. Like, if you're making copies of the curriculum, why wouldn't you, right? And the funny story for her is like, she was sleeping on her sister's couch. She was like $30,000 in debt. Like, she had made every mistake there was. And here she was sending me this email. I was like, well, the person you're looking for is not here. And then she wrote back and said, well, can I come and talk to you? And I said, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. And I wasn't too sure, like, well, what are your credentials? But she walked in and she had self-published this book. And I was like, well, she must know what she's talking about, right? And so we sort of laugh about this now because our own leadership journey from where we started together, with United Way and as friends and where we are now are completely different. And it just sort of shows you that growth arc for people who really want to make a difference in the world. And she's been on Good Morning America. She has a Netflix special. She was on PBS, right? She's frequent speaker all over the world. she's an incredible human being. But I think part of that also is going back to a question you asked me, what does it take to move up in leadership? I think it also takes a certain amount of personal characteristics within someone. You have to have integrity. You have to have the ambition. You have to, it's never going to be handed to you, right? It is a grind no matter what. And I tell people this all the time. It's not the grind maybe that it used to be, but it is the grind. And you also have to be willing to put yourself out there and admit when you're wrong, right? And I think that is such a critical thing. I knew I wasn't good at teaching financial literacy. I knew that I was incapable of it. And so I think that that's the other thing is also admitting when you've made a mistake. And that's important because we can't learn otherwise. But she's incredible. I love her. She's great.
So two things. You mentioned she was doing that and sleeping on her sister's couch, $30,000 a day. I always say those who can't do at first, they teach. And then they teach themselves. And it's really true. I've seen it over and over again, but it's incredible because sometimes we have to teach externally in order to learn internally. And that's okay. As long as it's part of our cycle. Now look at what's happening, which I think is so beautiful. And I also think about some people think that if they say they're wrong, it takes away from the fact that they're going to be frowned upon or not looked at as an expert in their field. It's actually strength to admit that you made a mistake and then you fix it.
Or there's things I'm not good at, right? I sit in front of the board chair and I'm like, look, I might be good in these three things. I really need your help with this. And I, again, incredibly lucky because she coaches me through a lot of those things. And, you know, when I first became the CEO, I had an executive coach and it was really challenging for me, not because I was afraid to make a mistake, but I really just couldn't get out of my own way. And I think the more we grow, as I look back, right, I mean, I was 36 years old. I mean, it was like, what do you mean I'm going to be this CEO of this organization? But as I look back on this decade long journey, you know, I know that you've heard people say this, like, I feel like I know less now than I did then. And I think what that really means is I assume I know less now than that I assumed I knew everything then, right? I know it all. I know it all. I'm great. I'm the shit. I'm a CEO. I got it. I got the title, right? The other thing I tell people a lot more recently is a lot of people want that title. A lot of people want this title. Very few people want the actual job. And I think that that is a critical thing in terms of understanding a lot of the work that I do is admitting to other people, I don't actually know this, so I'm going to go find the person who knows this, who either can coach me through it or coach you through it. That's what it is, right? And I think that's what makes leadership really, really important. And that's what I try to do. I tell people all the time, I put my pants on like everybody else. I put my pants on like you. I put my pants on like the guy who comes in and cleans the bathroom. I clean my own bathroom. And I think sometimes the staff is a little like, are you like the teacher who goes in the closet at night, right? And then you come out in the morning? No, like, I'm a real person, just like everybody else. But I think that human piece, that humanity piece is I don't have all the answers all the time. And I do make mistakes, but I will, once I figure it out or it's pointed out to me, I will try to correct that.
It doesn't make you less of a person if just because you make a mistake. And so many people live in that space. We could talk about that for hours too, because it's very true. What do you want? Like I said to you, I could talk to you for 3 hours. It's not, but your energy is incredible. And I just, how could you not? And that's the key. Is like a lot of people will say, "Oh, you got to sell the organization." It's not about the person. Meaning, it's not about the person who you're sitting across the table from. You got to make it about the organization. And a lot of times they don't put the. I'll give you an example. They don't put like the fundraiser out there, right? It's
Mm.
that person is. It's always about the volunteers. It's always about and it is. But I will say this: even though it is about the organization, it's also about the person because the funder and the is connecting not just with your mission, but if they don't like the person they're sitting across from and they don't feel connected to that person, you could be doing the best thing in the world. It's got to be about that connection. And I can feel that for you. I can only imagine like when people sit across the table, how they could ever say no to you. I don't know because
They do
I would
a lot.
I'll buy whatever you're selling. That's for sure. But that's the key. It's that authenticity. And so many people don't come from that authentic place. And they just see with these blinders on, I've got to hit my goal. I've got to do this. I have and they don't realize the importance of just being your authentic self and be so impassioned with the mission. It'll do it on its own. I always said lead with mission and the money will follow. That was always my mantra
Yeah.
and will always be my mantra. Do you
Yes.
find still though that there are a lot of inauthentic people that are out there in and they just want to sell? And I'm not even talking about nonprofit. I'm talking in general. I mean, I can tell you right now on my LinkedIn profile, so many people are trying to sell me something
Yeah,
that
I
every
know.
single day.
I know. It's like a new business strategy, right?
It
Uh,
is. It is.
you know, I think what's interesting about the world right now is there's a lot of unknown. And I think there's a lot of fear, right? If you watch the news, if you read the news, yes, young people, you should be reading the news, not online on the actual newspaper. Right? Let's give a plug to our newspapers.
Yes, yes.
Um, and I think when I think about authenticity, I think there is an entire movement around selling something online, right? If I hear one more person say, "Oh, I'm going to do content creation," right, as my job. Not that there's anything wrong with that. However,
Right.
there is a sort of art, what are you actually selling me? Because that's what you're doing. You're trying to actually sell me who you are and sell me something. And is that really authentic? And for so many people, it turns out that's not really authentic. And I think that there is right now, there is a lot of uncertainty, right, around not just in the United States, but around the globe, right, in our leaders, in the media, what we're being told, what's real, what's not real. And so I think when we do meet other people who are authentic, we have this immediate connection because it's like, oh, you're the real deal, right? And I used to have a mentor who would say to me, um, that's one of the real ones. And so you have to sort of navigate your way to find those other authentic people because I do find myself to be authentic. I hope so, but I feel like authentic people are the ones who change the world, right? And I think that that's so important. And I do think there is a lot of mistrust, there's a lot of misinformation, and a lot of that comes from people not being authentic. Um, and I think that's what we're dealing with right now. Everybody's like trying to figure out what the motivation is. Is it money? Is it power? Usually those two things are true. Um, but I do think that ultimately, meeting other authentic people are the things that sort of spark the joy and the work and the movement forward.
And you said something, it's what is, you start to think about what are other people's motivation. If
Hmm.
the motivation is just connection, which I feel so deeply about, amazing and incredible things happen.
Yes,
That's it. You connect them to you, you connect them to the mission, you can, and it's not, and it has to be that it is authentic, not
absolutely.
driven to be like, okay, well, we projected that XYZ company is going to bring in $30,000 this year. And so we're going to sit there. No, they feel it, they know it. So let's not talk about that. Let's just connect with them in the best way possible and everything else will happen. And that's
Yeah,
what I think is so important. We could be on, like I said, for a long time. What do you want to leave the listeners with? And again, thank you to the over 135 countries that have downloaded this podcast. And I hope all
amazing.
of them download this episode because I love Catherine's way of life and all that you're doing. What do you want to leave them with?
So this is gonna sound very odd, but I'm gonna connect the dots for you. The most important thing that I want to leave people with is I need everybody to vote. I don't care who you vote for. I need you to vote. There is, going back to this idea of authenticity, there is this pervasive hopelessness, right? No matter where you sit politically right now, there is this pervasive hopelessness. And I was in Texas recently and I had an Uber driver. She's amazing. I don't remember her name. Maybe she'll listen to this. And she said, I just feel like nothing matters and I don't know how to help, I don't know how to help and I don't know what to do. So the first thing I want everybody to do is register to vote and make sure you vote and vote in every election. Vote in your local election, your school board election, your state elections, the federal elections. It is so important that we do that. That is the first step towards engagement in our communities and making a difference. The second thing is you don't have to necessarily volunteer, donate, sit on a board for a United Way, but find something that you are passionate about and go chase that. Even if you work in corporate America, you work in the media, maybe you're an attorney, you don't have to work in this sector to make a difference, but find something in your community that you care about. Because what I understand recently, and I've been telling a lot of people this, and this is our work, is United Way is really, we are our neighbors helping our neighbors. And that's what I'm asking people to do. The way that you can help your neighbor, go out and vote and find something that you're passionate about, find a cause that you care about, make a donation, show up to volunteer. I think that's how we bring hope and joy back into the world.
Mm. So beautifully and eloquently said, Catherine, with no preparation. That
Thank you.
and that's what I love about this podcast is we don't prepare, questions. This is a very organic conversation, and I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your work, your passion, your energy, and all you do. And we didn't mention this, but like you said, it does take a team. How many are on your team?
So internally, I think we have seven, but with our our finance, our HR, all of that stuff, external, part-time externally, we probably have close to 25 folks. And then we have some seasonal folks who come in, so maybe closer to 30.
So I want to thank all of them too,
Yes.
because as you said, it takes an entire team to make
Yes,
the
it does.
machine work.
Yeah.
So that's beautiful. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. One more time for those listening, what is the website?
It's uwnewark.org.
Awesome. So, Catherine Wilson, thank you so much for being a part of this. Well, we want you to come back on and share updates. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
we would love that. And I'm going to say what I say at the end of every single podcast. Today is the day you cannot go back to yesterday, and you do not yet own tomorrow. So what steps, small or large, are you going to take today to get yourself closer to your goal? Catherine, again, I want to thank you for all that you do for everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. And I look forward to having you on again. Have a great week, everyone.
Take care.